The executive conference room at Vertex Pharmaceuticals felt sterile and cold, much like the attitudes of the board members seated around the polished mahogany table. Richard Harrison, our CEO, stood at the head of the room, his expensive suit matching his polished corporate demeanor. The quarterly financial projections glowed on a screen behind him, numbers that apparently mattered more than saving lives. My name is Dr. Emily Chen, and this is the story of how my failed cancer research project became the biggest breakthrough in oncology treatment, just not in the way my corporate overlords expected. The numbers are clear, Richard announced, barely glancing at my research data. Project Phoenix has consumed $50 million over 3 years with no marketable results. The board has voted to terminate the research and sell the patents to recoup our investment. I kept my expression neutral, making notes on my tablet. Notes that would prove very interesting to the FDA review panel on Thursday. Let's be honest, Marcus Williams, our CFO, added with a condescending smile. Targeted gene therapy is a pipe dream. The market wants traditional treatments, chemotherapy, radiation, surgical options, things we can sell now. What they didn't know, what none of them had bothered to understand, was that Project Phoenix wasn't just another cancer treatment. It was a completely new approach to fighting the disease, one that could transform patient outcomes while minimizing side effects. I thought back to 5 years ago when I left my position at the National Cancer Institute to join Vertex. They promised complete research freedom, substantial funding, and a commitment to breakthrough science. For the first 2 years, they kept that promise. The shareholders expect returns, Richard continued, not endless research with no clear monetization strategy. I made another note, 10:30 a.m. CEO prioritizes short-term profits over phase I trial data showing 94% efficacy rate in treatment-resistant cases. The irony was almost painful. While they saw failed research, I developed something revolutionary, a targeted therapy that could identify and neutralize cancer cells while leaving healthy tissue untouched. The preliminary results had been so promising that the FDA had fast-tracked our trials. We've already arranged to transfer your research data to our primary oncology division, Richard added. They'll evaluate if any components can be salvaged for traditional drug development. I thought about the 3 encrypted drives in my office containing the real Project Phoenix data. The version they had was comprehensive but incomplete, missing the key breakthroughs that had occurred in the past 6 months. Of course, I said quietly, I'll have everything organized by end of day. What Richard didn't know was that 6 months ago, I'd received a classified communication from my former colleague at the NCI, Dr. James Martinez. The government had been closely monitoring our trials, particularly the unprecedented success rates in cases that had failed all other treatments. The board members were already standing, considering the matter closed. They had merger meetings to attend, stock prices to monitor, profit margins to analyze. One question, I said, causing Richard to pause at the door. Have you reviewed the FDA's latest assessment of our phase I trials? His face flickered with uncertainty. Those results aren't due until next week. Actually, I smiled, they're announcing them Thursday. Back in my lab, I began methodically preparing for the announcement. The real Project Phoenix data was backed up securely, along with years of research notes, trial results, and patient recovery data. Results that showed not just tumor reduction, but complete remission in cases that traditional medicine had abandoned as hopeless. My phone buzzed. A message from Dr. Martinez. FDA panel prepared for Thursday. They've never seen numbers like these. You've done it, Emily. Sarah from HR stopped by, concern evident on her face. Dr. Chen, I heard about the project termination. If you need help with placement at another company. Thanks, Sarah, I said, carefully backing up my files. But I have a feeling everything will sort itself out. As I worked late into the evening, I thought about my mother, who had lost her battle with cancer 10 years ago. About how traditional treatments had ravaged her body while failing to save her life. She had been my inspiration for Project Phoenix, the drive to find a better way, a treatment that didn't feel worse than the disease itself. Thursday would change everything, because while Richard and the board were focused on quarterly profits, I've been focused on something far more important, saving lives. And in less than 48 hours, they would learn exactly what they'd just thrown away, because sometimes the best revenge isn't in fighting back. It's in letting people's own short-sightedness reveal their catastrophic mistake. Thursday was going to be very interesting indeed. The FDA's main conference center was packed Thursday morning, filled with medical reporters, pharmaceutical executives, and oncology specialists from around the world. Through the glass doors, I spotted Richard and several Vertex board members arriving, their usual corporate confidence wavering as they noticed the unprecedented media presence. "Dr. Chen," Richard called out, trying to maintain his authority. "What is the meaning of this? Why wasn't Vertex informed of this presentation?" "FDA protocols," I replied calmly, setting up my presentation materials. "The results were embargoed until today." Dr. Elena Martinez, the FDA's chief of oncology research, called the room to order. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're here to announce what may be the most significant breakthrough in cancer treatment in the past 50 years. Richard's face paled as Dr. Martinez continued. "Project Phoenix, developed by Dr. Emily Chen, has shown unprecedented success in treating advanced stage cancers that have proved resistant to all other therapies." For the next hour, I presented the true results of my research, not just the standard trial data, but the groundbreaking mechanisms that made Phoenix different from every other treatment. Traditional cancer therapies, I explained, displaying molecular imaging, are like using a sledgehammer to kill a fly. They damage healthy cells along with cancerous ones. But Phoenix uses targeted genetic markers to identify and neutralize only cancer cells. The room fell silent as they watched videos of the treatment in action. Cancer cells literally dissolving while healthy tissue remained untouched. "This is impossible," Marcus Williams protested. "Our review showed minimal efficacy." "You reviewed preliminary data," I corrected, displaying the complete trial results. "These are the full phase aita results. 94% complete remission in treatment-resistant cases. 0 significant side effects. Average treatment time, 3 weeks. Dr. Martinez stepped forward with more data. "We've verified these results across multiple independent trials. The implications are revolutionary. This could make traditional chemotherapy obsolete." More importantly, Dr. James Martinez added, "The treatment is simple to administer and could be produced at a fraction of the cost of current therapies." I clicked to my next slide, patient testimonials. Sarah Mitchell, stage 4 pancreatic cancer, given 3 months to live. Complete remission after 2 weeks of Phoenix treatment. Robert Chen, no relation, advanced lymphoma that had resisted 3 rounds of traditional chemotherapy. Cancer-free in 18 days. Richard stood up, his business instincts finally kicking in. "As CEO of Vertex Pharmaceuticals, I'm proud to announce that way." "Actually," I interrupted, "Project Phoenix is now under the control of the National Cancer Institute. I transferred the patents yesterday as per my original research agreement with them." The color drained from Richard's face as Dr. Martinez distributed documents to the board members. Dr. Chen's contract with Vertex specifically excluded intellectual property developed using her proprietary methods. The core technology behind Phoenix was developed during her time at NCI. "The company's resources," Richard began, "were used to test and refine an existing system," Dr. Martinez finished. "A system that will now be developed as a public resource, not a private profit center." I pulled up my final slide, the incorporation papers for the Phoenix Foundation, a non-profit research organization dedicated to making the treatment accessible worldwide. "The government has approved a $2 billion grant for global implementation," I announced. "The foundation will ensure that this treatment reaches everyone who needs it, not just those who can afford premium drug prices." The room erupted in applause. Medical reporters were already broadcasting live updates. Oncologists were calling their hospitals to join the implementation program. "You planned this," Richard accused, his voice tight with anger. "No," I corrected. "I plan to save lives. You're the ones who plan to profit from human suffering." The next few months transformed the landscape of cancer treatment. Phoenix centers opened across the country, then worldwide. The success rates continued to exceed all expectations. Vertex Pharmaceuticals faced its own reckoning. Their stock plunged when news broke that they terminated the most significant cancer breakthrough in decades. Richard and several board members were forced to resign when shareholders learned they valued quarterly profits over saving lives. 1 year later, I stood in the research center of the Phoenix Foundation, watching as new patients received treatment. The walls were covered with photos of survivors, people who had been given death sentences by traditional medicine, now living full, healthy lives. Dr. Chen, a voice called. I turned to see Sarah Mitchell, one of our first trial patients, now volunteering at the center. Another successful treatment today. Stage 4 lung cancer, complete remission in 16 days. Sometimes, late at night in my lab, I think about that final board meeting at Vertex. About Richard's dismissal of research he couldn't understand. About how they'd all prioritize profit over the potential to save millions of lives. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about achieving something so significant that it makes their greed look small and pathetic in comparison. The Phoenix treatment continues to evolve, becoming even more effective. We're not just treating cancer anymore, we're changing how the world thinks about the disease. It's no longer a death sentence but a treatable condition. And every time I see Richard at medical conferences, carefully avoiding eye contact, I think about choices and consequences. About how his rush to judge something he didn't understand cost his company billions and their place in medical history. Because in the end, true breakthrough isn't about quarterly profits or stock prices. It's about having the vision to see beyond immediate returns, the patience to build something revolutionary, and the integrity to ensure it helps as many people as possible. My mother would have been proud, not just of the treatment that could have saved her life, but of the choice to make it accessible to everyone who needs it. Because sometimes the greatest victory isn't in proving others wrong. It's in proving that humanity can still triumph over greed. And that's a cure worth more than all the pharmaceutical profits in the world.